Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Conversations with Annassa. What an honor and a privilege to be here with you this morning. So let's start with meditation. Take your attention inside. And we'll start thinking of 3 things you're grateful for. So we'll use the mantra, thank you, I'm sorry, and I love you. It's actually a practice more than a mantra. We can talk about the difference later. So feel into the tip of your tailbone. Thank you. I'm sorry, and I love you. Thank you. I'm sorry, and I love you. Thank you. I'm sorry, and I love you. And we're saying I'm sorry to any part of us that feels left out of the connection with the divine. You can think of it that way. Thank you. I'm sorry, and I love you. Thank you. I'm sorry, and I love you. And you can gently feel the energy collecting and rising up to whatever you consider your generative center. This is a reproductive center. And interestingly, where we're feeling it anatomically today in ourselves is it's a sex center that's between the womb, between the uterus and the tailbone. So it's in that neighborhood, in the center of the pelvis. So that's where we're feeling it today. We don't always feel it there. Thank you. I'm sorry, and I love you. And we say this to every cell of our physical body, every layer of our mental and emotional body, and every dimension of our spiritual body. So we're saying it throughout the parts of our being and allowing ourselves to expand into the parts of our being. Thank you. I'm sorry, and I love you. Gently allow your energy to rise up to the center just below your belly button. This is the center of the sun. You can even see bright yellow, the sun glowing. It's literally the location of the fire in one's belly. Thank you. I'm sorry, and I love you. Thank you. I'm sorry, and I love you. Gently allow your attention to rise to your solar plexus. Which is just below the tip of what's called the xiphoid process, a little bone at the end of the sternum. And this is a place where all of us at some time or another have had the wind knocked out of us. This is that place. And we tend to store anxiety here. So this is a good place to say, everything that's not mine, please leave. And you can hold your hands out for a minute to your sides and let everything that's not yours just go. All the while feeling into this center in the solar plexus. Thank you. I'm sorry, and I love you. Thank you. I'm sorry, and I love you. As you breathe deeply all the way down, you can feel the unneeded energetic layers coming up the sides of your body, down the sides of your arms, and out your fingertips. And as your energy field begins to lighten, you can feel your attention following the energy as it rises up to your heart center in the middle of your chest. Thank you. I'm sorry, and I love you. Thank you. I'm sorry, and I love you. Feeling everything just softening. Gently allow your attention to come up to your throat center. Thank you. I'm sorry, and I love you. Thank you. I'm sorry, and I love you. Gently experience your attention going to your third eye, behind and between your eyebrows, in the center of your head. Thank you. I love you, and I'm sorry. Thank you. I love you, and I'm sorry. And now feel a gigantic flower on top of your head with all the petals open, absorbing the wisdom, wonder, and pure love from the divine. Thank you. I love you, and I'm sorry. Thank you. I love you, and I'm sorry. Visualize the pranic plasma coming in to be received. Offered freely, just like rain from the heavens. This is the pure energy, or the energy of pure love. And now allow your attention to rise to the top of your aura, where your fingertips would touch if you made a halo around your head with your arms. Thank you. I love you, and I'm sorry. Understanding all the while that the I'm sorry we're saying is to ourselves, the parts of ourselves that have not yet been included in our total love and acceptance of ourselves. Thank you. I love you, and I'm sorry. And now let's just take a few minutes and sit in the fullness of this flow and experience it, however it is for you. Thank you. I love you, and I'm sorry. As you're ready, gently bring yourself back and we'll begin our conversation. So I want to start a little bit this morning talking about the levels of relationship that we have as human beings with each other. And, you know, we all have superficial acquaintances. And that's fine and natural and totally appropriate. And we all have relationships that are close, but they still fall in a category of flowing in and out of our lives. And then we have relationships, and usually the numbers of these get smaller as we descend. We have relationships with people where we have decided that no matter what happens in that relationship, the relationship itself is not up for negotiation, whether there will be a relationship or not. That we have accepted these people, or maybe it's just one person, into our lives where the relationship itself is non-negotiable. There will be this relationship, and we will pay attention to it and care for it as long as we are alive. And so we make a distinction between all three of these relationships because it's very important that the conscious behavior that you bring to each level of relationship be appropriate to what it is you have committed yourself to. That when we commit ourselves in relationship, truly, that relationship should become non-negotiable in terms of its existence, in that we agree that no matter what happens between us, we are not talking about the dissolution of the relationship. We are talking about how to improve its quality in form. And it's very important that we consciously make these decisions about relationship, and then we honor our commitments within these decisions. And, you know, there's no limit to the number of quality relationships that we have in any of these tiers, but we think it's worth thinking about who we have relationships with in what tier, because we have different expectations of ourselves and the people that we're interacting with, depending on which relationship we have agreed to within ourselves and between ourselves. And so we just want to offer this as a framework to begin to think about who and what we're committing our energy and resources to in our lives and being conscious about it. And then there is a whole other dimension, and we'll just call this the spiritual dimension of relationships, where we're not the ones with the power. You know, these relationships are not exactly up to us, but when we engage them, we also are responsible to engage them consciously. For example, Rebecca with Annassa. This is a relationship. It has negotiable parts to it and non-negotiable parts to it. It's an agreement to participate together for as long as it is mutually in service to the whole. Now, in this relationship, Annassa has no strings. There are no hooks. If at any time Rebecca wants to disengage temporarily, permanently, this is always an option. There is no assumption of permanence. It's free. Come and go as you like. And many of us treat our spirituality as a come and go as you like experience. Now imagine for a second if we held ourselves responsible to our relationship with the divine as a non-negotiable within ourselves, our awareness of that relationship as something that's non-negotiable. Just imagine that. And then at some point, we would love to entertain your questions about that. So we just thought we'd open with that discussion and our perception of it and see where that goes. And so we welcome your questions really about anything, but that's where we were this morning, so we thought we'd start there. How may we serve? We're so happy to see your shining faces. You know, we have this gorgeous day here today. We've had a whole string of them, some of them warmer and some of them colder. And it's so beautiful that we're starting to complain about the cold because we want to be in the warm, in the beauty. So happy to see you all shining forth. How may we serve? So we'll say a little bit about the relationship. So Rebecca is a conduit. A conduit for Annassa, and hopefully a conduit for the highest best. And the first thing we taught her when we started communicating through her was when not to channel. Because when personal emotions are running high, then the conduit gets a little bit fuzzy. And so there's self-awareness that is required. Also, when fatigue is overwhelming the system, then there can be, we'll call it short circuits, circuits that aren't quite complete in their firing because of fatigue. So there is a learning curve. And as with all of us, every once in a while, Rebecca goes over the edge with that, especially with fatigue and especially depending on the needs of the demands that feel imperative to serve. Then sometimes things can get a little bit blurry. But most of the time, that's how it works. And what happens as each of us become clearer and clearer in ourselves is that there is the possibility of becoming a conduit or a channel. And that has everything to do with your blueprint. If it's in your blueprint, it will be available. If it's not, other things will be available. But as you engage deeper and deeper energies within yourself, they will have their say. And this is a wonderful thing. Because anything else would cause us to be stuck. And stuck is stuck. And that, in our experience, is sort of a curse, to be stuck. And to be unstuck is to engage flow, to really engage flow. And the most important place to do that is within ourselves, deeply within ourselves, with a meditation very similar to what we did this morning. If you feel stuck at any point, sit down and get your own energy flowing. Get up, go outside, walk, get your energy moving. Lift weights, run, bicycle, whatever you can do to get your physical, emotional, and spiritual energy unstuck. This puts us in flow, and once we're in flow, in motion, then we can begin to feel deeper and bigger within ourselves. And that flow takes out all the old chemistry, and we can begin to revitalize ourselves in a new flow that has within it, if we go outside, lots of oxygen, and hopefully, depending on our environment and how polluted it is, and we can get ourselves moving, and in that motion we can revitalize ourselves and begin to participate in a deeper way in our own lives. So please, we welcome your questions. Yes.
Question. In our relationship with the divine, are we only engaging in the relationship through meditation, or are there other ways to connect?
Well, in a way, this is a complex question because the real question is, how do we begin to engage the nonlinear from the linear? This is the question you're asking. Because divinity is completely nonlinear. And we are pretty much completely linear. And because most of us were taught as we arrived in this body, in this culture, in this location, most of us were taught that linear thinking is all there is. And so our first way of beginning to engage the nonlinear is to have a spiritual practice. And spiritual practice is sitting down and engaging the nonlinear by getting very, very quiet. And in that quiet, the nonlinear begins to emerge. And of course, the first thing we do is greet it with our linear mind and try to contain it and use it. And, what am I going to do with this? That's our first thought. Because we live in a world where doing is rewarded and being is not really tolerated. And so once we realize that we're trying to take our being and turn it into doing, then we can get quiet again and begin to expand that quiet that is beingness rather than doing. And through that contact with the quiet and the expansion, allowing the expansion of the being, then meditation becomes alive. And it's no longer a doing, but a being, an opportunity to be with love itself. And the highest is to make that love within ourselves non-negotiable, the non-negotiable foundation of what we are. And when we betray that attention on the love, we don't reject ourselves, but we completely hug ourselves back into that love. Because we understand that failure is the path to every success. And that love is a being, a cultivation of being. And as we cultivate that more and more, it begins to flow through us as the source of our own vitality. And we ride that wave as we ride all waves. And we begin to see that we have a choice about which waves we engage as they come through us. Because waves come through us all the time. And our, in the beginning, it's our habit to look for something outside to explain the wave that's coming through inside. And then we identify with that. We say, okay, it's because of this. And then we begin to react to that when, you know, it was just a wave coming through. And once we are able to acknowledge that these are waves coming through and we don't engage a few of them, then we see the potential freedom of choice about what we engage. So we've long since forgotten the question. We hope we answered it.
They did say thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. So how may we serve further?
Hi, it's Paul. Hello?
Hi, Paul. Yes.
Speaking of
What a
waves,
beautiful sky we're seeing. Can we hear you?
can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Speaking of waves, I've been thinking, it's a new moon today or later today, and thinking about tides. Moons, new moons, full moons, in particular, seem to affect me, but I don't know. It's like a tidal action affecting your body. I was wondering if Annassa might have any insights on tidal effect on the body and the mind, maybe spirit. Just maybe your thoughts on that.
Yes. Well, it's nice to have this question from a male. You know, women have been subject to these tides always through the menstrual cycle, which aligns with the cycle of the moon, and also with the other women in proximity. And so there is a natural hormonal relationship between human beings and the cycles of the moon and the sun and the tides. And we congratulate your sensitivity in noticing that how you feel at different parts of this cycle is different, because this is really, this kind of sensitivity is what we are training and hoping to train in you, that you are aware of where some of these waves come from, so that rather than being pummeled by the waves, there is a sense of, oh yes, this is that, and how beautiful. As it passes through, we no longer feel the need to engage because we understand. And so there are, when this engages a feminine hormonal cycle, there are definite emotional stages that go with that hormonal cycle, that it really helps a lot if you understand as you're going through this. Oh, this is PMS, and so I'm going to feel this way, and I'm going to likely blame everyone around me for it. And then you can step back a bit and go, oh, this is just how I feel every month. Maybe it's nobody's fault. It's just the feeling that comes through with the wave. And so there is a large part of self-acceptance that can really be understood and cultivated as we see that our feelings ebb and flow with the tides of the moon and the ocean, because we are responsive to them And not knowing that that's what we're responding to does not let us off the hook of responsibility for our actions. So it's very helpful to begin to understand, oh, at this time of the month, I generally feel this. And you might even track it on a calendar. We recommend that all of you do that, actually. If you have recurring emotional patterns that you don't understand in yourself, that don't seem to be related to the circumstances around you, it can be very helpful to track the cycles of the moon and the cycles of your emotions. And after 3 or 4 months, you'll begin to see if there's a correlation and what that correlation is. And it may be very surprising to you that you are not the one in control. That actually what's happening is that you are responding to the emotional waves between the moon, the sun, the moon, and the ocean. The moon is reflective, refractive. The sun is the radiance that is reflected and refracted. And then the water on our planet responds to these forces by appearing to expand and contract. And this expansion and contraction happens it happens throughout the bodies of water. And in a very real way, human beings, because we are largely water, experience the same tides. And this howling at the moon during the full moon, this is a human experience. Anyone who's ever been in an emergency room more than 1 month in a row, you can tell the full moon by what happens. People go a little bit insane during the full moon. Not all people, but people who are already on a tendency to be on that edge, they're very reactive when the full moon happens. And as we said earlier, just because you're reactive does not mean that you're not responsible for your behavior. And so that this knowledge is not a part of our organic learning about ourselves, we find a little bit criminal, because the levels of participation in our own beingness are really reduced when we're not informed about the causes of our feelings. That may not have anything to do with anybody else in our environment, but with our own sensitivities. And part of spirituality, as you all have experienced by now, I'm sure, is that as you expand your internal awareness, your sensitivity also expands. And so this is where these questions are coming from. Wow, I feel something with the moon. That is sensitivity. That is understanding that we are more than just a heap of flesh occupying space for a certain amount of time. We are sentient. We have choice. In every moment, we have choice about what we are aligning ourselves with, what we are synchronizing to. and how we are behaving, what we are both sending out and receiving. We are gigantic transmitters and gigantic receptors. We hope that answers your question, Paul. Is there more you'd like us to talk about?
Yeah, that helps. That answers the question. You know, I've got the sensitivity, but that doesn't mean that I don't feel like I'm in a spin cycle in the washing machine sometimes, and you know, you just kind of have to.
But yes, that happens. And that happens to all of us. But realizing that you're in a spin cycle in the washing machine because of what the moon is doing is a lot different from feeling like you're in a spin cycle because, you know, your neighbor backed over your driveway for a second. And we're just using that as an example that came to mind. This is not anything that has anything to do with Paul. It just came through our mind as an example of how people take a feeling that they're experiencing and impose it on an external experience and blame that external experience for their internal discomfort when, you know, those are connecting two dots that had nothing to do with each other. And so it's very helpful to know that the reacting that we feel like doing has its foundation in a natural course of the tidal movement of the fluids on the planet and within ourselves, and not something that we or somebody else did wrong. So we flow through these cycles and we have a choice about how we respond. And to our way of thinking, knowing that you're not exactly responsible for why you feel the way you feel, and being a little bit leery about attributing responsibility to something that just happened in our environment for the discomfort that is likely passing through that we could ignore. This uncomplicates our lives enormously because we decrease the amount of reacting we do and we increase the amount of our sentient awareness and conscious participation rather than unconscious reactivity. So we really appreciate that question a lot and are grateful that it came up today. Thank you. Does that help, Paul?
Thank you.
You're welcome. How may we serve further? Yes, Suzanne.
I'm thinking about the word alignment. We've used that a lot in these sessions, and I'd like to hear just some more information about that, how we experience it, how we move into it.
Well, we use alignment in a couple of ways. The first thing is alignment with our own personal divinity. And the way that happens is that we are tuning ourselves into the awareness of alignment with our blueprint. Every single one of us has a unique blueprint that we designed before our arrival here, in communion with our highest self. And this blueprint has everything to do with our, we'll call it, continuous self-discovery. And in the alignment with our blueprint, we seek to complete our intentions for this life. And so this is what we mean by alignment in this context, is that we are aligning ourselves with our own divinely inspired intentions throughout time and space for this life. And as a part of our deepening awareness, we are actively engaging ourselves and any forces that have aligned with us to express to us and show us in a real way what acting out in alignment with this blueprint should look like. So we're seeking that alignment so that we can express ourselves in union from that union with our agreed to blueprint and our desire to fulfill whatever is required of us in this life. And what this means in practical terms is that we serve. We have an attitude of serving what comes toward us as though that is the request of our blueprint. That is our blueprint coming to us saying, please serve in this way. And as we align ourselves with that, then we begin to develop discrimination about it. Because as we experience serving, whatever comes, then we begin to develop a sensitivity to what is related to our blueprint and what is not. And this is lived through experience as we continuously cultivate ourselves and our interactions as feedback showing us the way. So this is why it's the pathless path, because it has everything to do with our intention as we engage. And sometimes our engagement is just the simple taking care of our body as well as we can. Sometimes that's what our engagement is. And there are, levels of our being that are served in this way. And whatever it is that our requirement of the moment is, it's very important that we consciously embrace ourselves with love and respect, so that when we serve, we know that we are serving our highest, because it's coming from that place in ourselves. And as we engage that, it informs us. And so that's about as much as we can say. And the rest of it is lived through experience. So we welcome you practicing and then bringing your questions as you practice in this way back to us, and this will help with the understanding of how this is lived through experience. Does that make sense,
Yes,
Suzanne?
and it was very helpful right now. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. And you notice the demands are multidimensional.
Yes.
You know, they're the ones from within, they're the ones from without, they're the ones that we're not sure we should respond to, and the ones that we're absolutely certain we must respond to. You know, they all have their own hierarchy. And, you know, we become informed as we attempt to serve about how that, what needs to be served when and how. Because very often what presents itself to us well, we'll just say that appearances are deceptive. And so we welcome you to work with this and then bring your questions. We'll just say that much for now. Okay?
Thank you.
You're
I will
so
do that.
welcome. How may we serve further? You know, we have to say that it's our observation over time that everyone who is participating with us is deepening in their experience and awareness of their own divinity. And it's so beautiful to watch from here, to see the dullness clearing, the brightness shining through, the love really coming to the surface. And it's just so beautiful to witness. We want you to know how delighted we are with these conversations. Thank you. How may we serve further? Anything, Brenda?
You just said appearances can be deceptive, and that makes me wonder how that manifests in relation to our blueprint.
Well, we said that because it's been our observation that what people say they want and what actually serves their highest best may not be the same. And so this becomes relevant as we engage in a path of service. So we will use the word discrimination because discrimination is necessary at every stage of our development. And discrimination is what allows us to stop and ask deeply within ourselves what's the highest best and not respond until we have an answer or until the urgency of the situation requires us to answer as best we can. And very often the urgency will feel like it's very demanding that we act now. And yet our discrimination will say it's not time yet. And so learning how to walk this razor's edge is part of our pathless path. And so we didn't want to make things more complicated because we always say that if it's not simple, it's not spiritual. And that's true. But discrimination is its own the workings of discrimination follow their own laws. And as we participate consciously, we learn. And as with everything, most of our learning is through failure, and that's okay. And so this takes us again to why we're saying I'm sorry with Ho'oponopono. Because as we engage the deepest parts of ourselves and attempt to live in alignment with our blueprint, failure becomes our friend. Because it happens a lot that we misunderstand or we misinterpret or we misalign, but our discrimination and our knowledge base and our actions don't always align in the way that we hope. And that's our learning. And so we have to be in a constant state of allowing ourselves to fail in order to learn. And as we age, this becomes harder and harder because we really want to, we feel like we know it all. We've lived a long time and we have a lot of understanding. And so, we don't want to work hard at it anymore. But then it's got its own revitalizing experiences to it. And so that's really a very temporary and occasional state that we'll go through. But this self-forgiveness, this self-acceptance that becomes unquestioning, really the conversation that we had at the beginning of the program about non-negotiable relationship. Well, the first non-negotiable relationship that we need to commit ourselves to is loving ourselves. Who among us has achieved this? So as you feel into that, you see we all have this internal mountain to climb of self-acceptance, real self-love. And if we are going to live a life of love, then the first person we have to love is right here. And that's not about being narcissistic. That's a very different thing. Narcissism is self-absorption to the point of discounting the opinion of others, not even hearing it. That's not what we're talking about. What we're talking about is a kind of self-acceptance that allows us to fail repeatedly in the context of self-discovery. And this is something truly, truly worth cultivating, because as that self-love becomes the ground that we walk on, it doesn't mean that we're infallible. It means that we have the flexibility to accommodate our mistakes, to take responsibility for what we don't do well and get better at it. So we are a continuous self-improvement, but it's got a lot of discrimination and a lot of self-discovery, and then discovering ourselves to be love itself. That's the real thing. And that is a visceral experience. How may we serve further? We hope that answers your question.
Thank you for connecting the dots to full circle.
Well, we've kind of been building a head of steam toward meditation and transmission. So maybe we should just give into it and do it for the last 15 minutes that are left here. So we'll do it consciously. Take your attention inside, and we welcome you to take in this transmission in whatever way feels best for you. We offer it in an eyes open way. And so we'll invite you to repeat the meditation that we did at the beginning of the program as we engage in transmission. So you can do your own self-directed meditation, and we will be transmitting until the end of class. Thank you all so much for coming today. We're so grateful for this opportunity to be with you. Such sacred space. Thank you so much. Bye for now.